In 2022, I had a vision of Spirit, a woman that lives at the bottom of a well, and she is hungry, anticipating the toss of a coin. The lore is that a wish, an intention, is part of someone's soul, and they can imbue objects with their soul. And that's what she's ravenous for. In that way, she isn't the type of spirit that feeds on fear or other negative emotions, but on desires, especially those types of wishes that are not shared with anybody except the object in hand. I decided she would be Taino, which is the Native American specifically from Puerto Rico, so that's the image I went with when designing her. I thought it was an interesting juxtaposition, particularly within the context of history, to place a Taino spirit in a wishing well, which comes from ancient European folklore. I'm also very interested in post-industrialism reclaimed by nature aesthetics, so even though in this instance it isn't really post-industrial, it still has a sort of man-made thing is abandoned and reclaimed by nature vibe. The atmosphere of the painting is actually rather warm, which was a conscious choice. I didn't want to lean into something that felt cold and inherently evil. Rather, I wanted the piece to hold a sense of unease while also being alluring. Almost like the warmth is part of the reason why you might lower your guard and yet still remain wary. This also helps with my general themes of dreaminess that I try to infuse into all my pieces. I surrounded the character with various plants from moss to ferns that can be found in Puerto Rico as well. Green is a rather strong color in this illustration. When we look at the idea at surface level, all this green is not necessary. You need a well and a woman and coins, and those things aren't green. But green is associated with harmony, peace, stability, and endurance. It relates to growth, renewal, even hopefulness. Because of nature, it is often seen as the color of security and abundance as well. This all goes in hand with the character, but also with the person that is making the wish. The well itself, I know might not look it, but it's orange, which is the same color as the spirit's eyes. It denotes optimism, adventure, and confidence while evoking enthusiasm and creativity. However, I would say that red is a prominent contender for the viewer's attention. It is featured on her skin as well as her eyes. Red represents passion, warmth, and sexuality, danger, violence, and aggression. Adam Grant is a professor specializing in organizational psychology, which is the study of humans in the workplace and how to apply psychology to make it better. If you don't know who Adam Grant is, ditto, I didn't know either. But if I tell you to just make it exist first and make it good later, does that ring any bells? If you're on the internet and in any creative space, you might have stumbled on the trends once or 100 times. This quote is attributed to him and a post of a sticky note he published with this written on it. The purpose of the motto is to overcome perfectionism, which I've talked about extensively, by putting more importance to existence of a draft than to a fully fleshed out product of the gate. It's also a really good way to battle decision paralysis lots of us experience. Writer and artist Austin Kleon said, quote, "In the beginning, there is nothing. Then there is something. That something doesn't have to be good, it just has to exist." End quote. I unintentionally followed in this advice without ever hearing of it in 2022 because at some point with this illustration, I found that it wasn't quite living up to what I wanted it to be. So I saved it to come back to later when I had a better vision and better skills to bring it to life. And then 2025 came, which I know that's a few years in between, but my skills had greatly improved. I had gotten the hang of Clip Studio. I even learned how to curate Pinterest boards better, which is a skill in and on itself, however silly it may sound. Because if part of your motivator is the vision board and the vision board is a mess, then it's not actually helpful. It's not a guide, it's a collage of pictures. The idea was interesting in concept, but rudimentary in its original design until it wasn't. For example, you might have noticed how in 2022, I was drawing each brick of the well, but in 2025, I don't. That's part of the process of growing as an artist. Details like that are not necessary because that's not the focal point. My art style is also meant to lean a little dreamier and hazier than all that. I love Impressionism too, and I think you will notice that in the plant as well. She is the main character, she is the focus, and so she's the subject most detailed. Back then, I also used cooler shadows, which I don't use anymore, instead going for warm, sometimes even quite bright reds. The general colors in 2022 were really just me not knowing anything and trying my best. From a story perspective, at the start I envisioned her standing, but in the completed version, she's sitting. This fits better with her characterization. She's not desperately using extra energy to stand and be closer, as though she needs to snatch the coin from your hand. She's sitting in wait because she's confident the coin will come to her. She's not interested in you as a person, or getting any closer for that matter. She wants your wish, the part of the soul you're giving away, and you'll do that all on your own, directly into her hands. This is a small detail, but I also had her in clothes. I had drawn nude characters at the time, so I'm not quite sure why I decided clothes made sense for an outdoor spirit that lives in a well. And I was leaning heavily on a more luxurious and rich aesthetic overall, which doesn't fit the type of spirit she is either. And for all I did, nothing in the illustration looked like it belonged together in the same actual setting. Looking back at it, it looks like a set as opposed to a lived environment. You also couldn't see the water at all, no blues or greens. I don't really even know what to say about that. Overall, I think that by stumbling on the idea of making it exist first and make it good later was truly what this illustration needed. And to be fair, it is something that, while it is true that you can do all that in your head without ever making it exist first, I feel like by making it exist, by having an actual file saved in your hard drive or your computer, that you're seeing it. Every time you open the file, every time you open a folder, it's right there. And I feel like for me personally, it makes me more likely to come back and finish it so that it doesn't have to just stay there as a draft forever. Because there's a lot of ideas that I have in my head that I never make exist first. I never make a draft. I never open a file and throw in some sketch made like stick figures. And what ends up happening is that it essentially never makes it out of my head because it's just like an idea that I have and I don't feel the necessity to make it better because it doesn't exist yet. And I find that this advice is definitely very true to me and my process. Thank you for tuning in. Click on the subscribe button. Have a magical day.